Chapter 5, The Comic Book Store. Her dad was just finishing the dishes when she came downstairs. He grabbed his pair of jeans that were lying on the dryer and changed quickly in the bathroom. He grabbed his keys, which were still attached to the giant belt hook which he attached to the loop, and shoved the keys in his pockets. He grabbed his wallet and then looked at Sam. "Ready?" he asked her. She nodded and started to walk towards the door. Her dad looked confused, and Sam turned around to Wren, handing her purse with a confuzzled look on her face. "You'll probably need your purse," she said, her eyes squinting as if she was trying to see whatever Sam was withholding from them. "Oh, thanks. Don't know what I was thinking," she said, and laughed awkwardly. Wren was still staring at her dubiously, as if she was just waiting patiently for Sam to crack and tell her what was going on. She wasn't going to lie. If she kept looking at her like that, the probability of her spilling the beans was pretty high. She walked out into the backyard, following her father to his car. She hopped into the passenger seat, and when he fired up the car, music started pouring out of the speakers. Her father had always had impeccable taste in music, and today was no exception. She recognized the song "Bad Bad Leroy Brown" by Jim Croce, and her shoulders immediately started shrugging, one shoulder at a time, to the beat. Her dad threw the car into drive just as Sam broke and started singing along. Her dad smirked as his head bobbed to the sound of one of his favorite songs coming from the stereo, and the surround sound of his daughter lightly belting out the lyrics next to him. This continued through "Careful Man," and then Sam's absolute favorite, "Roller Derby Queen." There was something about him falling in love with a woman on the TV screen that he described as a refrigerator with a head that never stopped being hilarious to her. They got to the end of the steep hill that led to the state highway the comic book store was on. It was right across from the river, and unfortunately, it had been flooded more than once, but they never let that stop them. The giant murals on the side of the building always put a smile on her face. Superman and Silver Surfer were prominently displayed on one huge retaining wall, while Green Lantern and Captain America sat like guardians on either side of the door. Sam was excited to see the addition of Wonder Woman and Spider-Man to the clan. She felt the rising excitement that she got every time she visited the store. They walked in and she saw the familiar face behind the counter, and she was relieved that some things never changed. He was an older man with a white shirt, basic old blue jeans held up by suspenders. She had known him all her life, and some of her favorite memories were when he used to sneak her candy when she was little. He would hand her these little dual-colored lollipops that tasted like a sweet tart, which had become one of her favorite things in the whole world over the years. Her dad's greeting interrupted the memories coursing through her head. "Hey, George," he said as he walked towards the counter and rested an elbow on it, clearly settling in for a long chat. "Wally, how are you doing?" he asked. "You have a bunch of stuff in your bin," he said in a jokingly disapproving tone as he walked away from the counter through a small door to the back room where the bins were kept. Her dad guffawed loudly as he explained that he had been so busy lately, but was picking up everything today. Sam listened, smiling quietly to herself as she started her usual turn around the store. Hanging from the ceiling were hundreds of toys, some of them action figures, but some were old fast food toys and cereal box prizes. The walls were lined with books on display, but below them were thousands of back issues dating back decades. She loved this place for the way it contained so many years within one small building. Author's note: the comic book store is a real place. It is an actual real place. I did actually grow up there. It was actually my very first job. It was not an official job. It was under the table. and I would work for like 5 hours on a Sunday when I was like 13. And all of the money that I made would go towards my dad's subs. And the subs are subscriptions. So, like the books that you pay attention to, that you focus on. Um, so, like George Wood, or George, older George, this is who is referenced here. He passed away in 2011. Um, he did used to give me sweet tart pops every like all the time when I was a kid. Um, it was my first job, and it was really funny because for anybody who is a woman in geekdom and geek spaces, especially the geek spaces that are male dominated, which is most of them, it can get weird. It took me a really long time to like get my cred at the store because all the guys were like, "What is a girl doing here?" I was like, "Dudes, I probably know more about comics than you do." And I did 95% of the time. Um, but yeah, still to this day, like I'll tell, like when I was teaching classes, my kids would be like, "Oh, miss, what about this?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And we'd like argue about it. I will say I'm not up to date on anything. So like any of the new stuff happening in like the comics universe, other than like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or like the DC Cinematic Universe, I have no idea. I stopped reading years and years ago. So like my knowledge is kind of from like the 1970s to like the mid to late 2000s is like where I am. And I say like the 70s because I read a lot of like the New Mutants and like the old stuff. Oh, I love that. The if you have a chance to read the original New Mutants, oh, that series is bomb. It is so good. Danny Moonstar is awesome. And like, let's be real, magic. Love me some magic. Um, that story is coming at some point. I will tell you about the time that my building guy here in McNess basically just handed me a mama cat and her 6 or 7 infant kittens, like brand new. They were like 12 hours old in a box, and was like, and I ended up with 10 total cats in my house. And all of the foster kittens were actually named after X-Men, which is why somewhere in this house is a very large tiger cat named Banshee, because him and his sister Siren um, were similar, and they were both very loud as kittens. He is actually not loud as a grown cat, which is weird. He does a weird, and that's it. He doesn't meow. Um, but yeah, that's why I have Banshee. I'll tell that story another time. But the comic book store is real. It's an awesome place. I have its 30th anniversary patch on my little memory wall. Um, the guys mean the world to me. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. The toys are real. And I'll post a separate thing about some stories about the comic book store because I have a million. I have so many, just so many. But yeah, the comic book store is real, and I did grow up there, and it's an awesome place. And still to this day, I miss it, like the store misses George because George was just the heart and soul of all of us. Um, but it lives on. It lives on in all everybody who knew and loved him. So this episode will be dedicated to him because I loved him and I miss him. I still love him. I don't know why I put it in past tense. I know he's gone, but yeah. Hi, Ted. That's my cat interrupting my recording. Anyways, back to the story. It smelled like it contained many years too, like the oldest library you've ever been to. She knew that the smell was just the book's slow disintegration. Her father had explained it to her once when she was little, but she couldn't help but love that musty smell of history within these hallowed walls. Suddenly, she remembered her purpose and her head whipped around as she realized she was here to try to find Nick. Hey, George, has Nick been in today? she asked, trying to sound as nonchalant as she possibly could. There was a dawning comprehension on her dad's face as he realized why she wanted to come with him. But then it was like he got hit with twice as much confusion. She didn't have time or the energy to try to interpret that look or guess what it meant. She needed Nick. No, he hasn't, George said. And seeing the disappointment on Sam's face, he added, but there's a new shipment of cards today, so he'll probably be in shortly. Oh, thank God, Sam said. And her dad's mouth opened like he was going to ask something, but then shut again. He looked like a fish gasping for air, but then thinking better of it. Sam attempted an airy tone when she said to him, I just need to ask him something, nothing important, just have to talk to him for a bit. Her dad was still looking at her through furrowed brows, but decided to just let it go. He turned back to George and started chatting away about some book from the 80s that they had both liked, and Sam continued her turn around the store. As she walked through the alphabet of back issues, Sam remembered Nick asking her about the latest Supergirl, and she realized that she hadn't read it yet. She flipped through them and found the backboard for Supergirl Volume 4, and she was lucky enough to find issue 32 in the section. All right, additional author's note. I tried to be really accurate in the timeline, but I did take some. I chose some things that don't fit perfectly. One of them was Supergirl. I was obsessed with Supergirl. It is volume 4. It is the one where it's Linda Danvers, who's like a normal person. And if memory serves me right, she's like infected by some sort of symbiote, kind of like Venom. And then she becomes Supergirl. So, like, the reason I loved it was because Linda Danvers looked like me, like short brown hair. She just looked like a normal brown haired everyday person. And then she would transform and she become the blonde bombshell Supergirl, blah, blah, blah. And I really loved that because it was nice having a superhero who, you know, she really looked, I looked just like her when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. She looks just like me. Maybe I'll become a superhero. I was very obsessed with becoming a superhero. Um, More on that later. That's going to be a whole nother story. I got to write that down. Superhero. I got stories about that one. That one's funny. Uh, but Supergirl Volume 4, number 32, actually came out in 1996. So it would have been like 3 years old by the time I went to camp. So it wouldn't have been like, hey, have you seen the new one? But I really love that specific cover. It's a great cover. Where like Supergirl has these like wings of flame and it's so awesome. So I kept it even though it doesn't fit the timeline because I just really, really liked it. Also, all the descriptors are correct. I did reread the book just to like make sure that I knew what the hell I was talking about. But it is, I mean, I just like that story and that specific book. So I threw that in there just because I liked it. If you are trying to get into comics or like you have a kid who you're trying to get into comics, I deeply suggest the Supergirl series. If they're super, I would read them first. Always read your comics and your books first to make sure that you're okay with your kids reading this stuff. Because, like, I don't remember exactly what's in there, and like, comic books can get real fast. Um, but I remember, I mean, I was reading it at around that time, like 97, 98, 99, when I was like between 10 and like 13. And I was absolutely obsessed with the books. They were fabulous. Um, but yeah, can't suggest it enough. I know in my previous author's note I had mentioned New Mutants. If you're looking for comic book recommendations, they're gonna be old because I don't read any of the new stuff. There's too many crossovers and it pissed me off. But if you want to look for like old stuff, I'm your girl. I can get you good recommendations. All right, back to the story. She knew George wouldn't care, so she carefully removed it from the plastic sheath and flipped through the book. The beauty of comic books to Sam was it was a quick read, and she always loved seeing the artwork. There was something about Supergirl with flaming wings that was a really great image. She was flipping through the final pages where the little girl and her mom who asked her to help turned out to be working for the bad guy when she heard the tinkling of bells that meant someone was walking in the front door. She turned and relief poured through her as she saw Nick's face. He looked so completely grown that it would have shocked Sam if she hadn't taken the time to come to terms with the fact that he would look as different as she did. Gone were the rounded cheeks and the soft face of the boy she knew. He was standing before her, maybe not as chiseled as Gary had been, but definitely close to. It was a bit jarring, but she was so grateful that he was here, she could look past his mannish good looks. She carefully placed the book back in its protective plastic sheath, put it back in its place in the bin, and then waited patiently as he greeted her dad and George. Sam was looking for you, she heard George say as he pointed to the back room where she had been reading the issue. He walked through the doorway and she saw him fully for the first time. He looked downright athletic and strong. She was genuinely impressed with the man he had grown into. He waved rather awkwardly and said, "Hey?" But before he could continue, Sam had launched herself at him and hugged him around the neck so hard she wasn't sure if she would strangle him accidentally. He let out an oof and just stood there for a second as Sam continued to cling to him for dear life. After a minute or so, his body loosened up and he wrapped his arms around her waist in a big bear hug. There was a solace in this moment, a comfort that she hadn't even realized that she needed as badly as she clearly did. "So what's this all about?" she heard him ask, still hugging her back tightly. She eventually loosened her grip and pulled away reluctantly. "What do you know about time travel?" Sam asked. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate everybody who has taken the time out of their day. I know everybody is super busy and super tired right now, but I appreciate y'all showing your support. Please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. I'm always paying attention. I'm always looking. You can read everything on Wattpad. So if you want to read the actual chapters, please, the link is in my bio. It will also be in this video. And as always, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much again. Keep spreading sunshine. Keep spreading everything that is good in this world. And keep being awesome. All right. Next up will be chapter. Ooh. You know what? I'm not even going to cut that because Sage is right. Oh, Sage. He threw me off. Next up is going to be chapter 6. And it's going to be back to the past. So tune in for that. All right. See you next time. Well, I try to get the cat from out behind the couch. Bye, my little chickadees.